The day is finally here. It's very apparent that the next wave of Nintendo announcements are primarily going to be for the Nintendo Switch 2. So I don't anticipate a lot of major new Nintendo Switch games coming out this year. All of them, I'm sure, are going to primarily be considered Switch 2 releases, even if they are technically like on the Nintendo Switch. So for me personally, going into like the end of this console generation, it's time to look back on the most successful entries in Nintendo's iconic console. These are the top 10 greatest Nintendo Switch games. Starting off at number 10, we have the illustrious Fire Emblem Three Houses, the newest entry in the long-running Fire Emblem series, and, as of this recording, by far the most popular. I know people who have put hundreds of hours into this game because of the depth of the story, the characters, the gameplay mechanics, and just how many engaging, unique situations you can get yourself into. A single playthrough of this is going to take around 30 hours or so. And considering the sheer amount of routes and alternate paths you can take along the route, the characters you can meet along the way and interact with and bring with you, there is an endless amount of replay value in this game. Considering the complexity of the scope and the themes and the characters, you can have a wildly different experience than someone else. In fact, this very well may be one of the most hotly debated video game plots I've ever seen in my life in regards to who was in the right, who was in the wrong, who was out of line, which side do you take? And one of the really beautiful things about this game is that there is no real clear answer. Unlike the previous entry, Fire Emblem Fates, which clearly wanted you to side with one side over the other, Three Houses gives you the freedom to choose. And in a lot of ways, there is no right and wrong answer. There is no good and bad. It's a lot of moral gray. And for a Nintendo game, that really gives it this really unique vibe to it. One that really sticks out among most other Fire Emblem games and has led to this being like this really well-regarded gem among the series. Now, there are certainly problems with the game. The gameplay is kind of light and the plot doesn't make sense in some regards, and the pacing can be kind of a slog, but in a lot of ways, those aspects of it simply elevate the experience. In a lot of ways, this game's low moments really makes like the moments that work even more effective. The fact of the matter is you're going to be spending a lot of time interacting with and getting to know the characters across a wide range of playthroughs. And you end up getting attached to them more than you would in any other JRPG. It's kind of phenomenal playing this game, getting attached to one character on one playthrough, and then having to go against him in the follow-up, in another playthrough, right? Having to kill him on the battlefield. That it leads to such these heart-wrenching emotional moments where no matter what you do, a lot of people are going to die, and it ends up making the game feel like it has a lot of weight to it. At number 9, we have Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Unlike Fire Emblem Three Houses, which I feel is rather limited compared to a number of other Fire Emblem games, including the iconic Fire Emblem Awakening, Path of Radiance, and its immediate follow-up, Fire Emblem Engage, Kirby and the Forgotten Land is, by far, the best Kirby game ever made. I know, because after this came out, I went back and played through pretty much all of my favorites. Kirby 64, Kirby Adventure, Triple Deluxe, Planet Robobuy. Like, the list goes on and on and on. I played through all of those games just to make doubly sure, but my first instinct was correct. This game is an absolute gem. It is the best in the series by far and grows and evolves the series in a way that is honestly unprecedented for a Nintendo IP. This is Kirby's first 3D outing, and it would have been so easy to make this just a clone of Mario 64, but instead, what HAL Labs managed to accomplish was to create an incredibly creative, inventive adventure that takes Kirby to places that he has never gone to before. You'll be racing along race car tracks. You'll be fighting cats. You'll be getting into these fun and engaging boss fights. And you'll be exploring a number of really creative, wild environments that are really lush to look at and just feel very vibrant and colorful in spite of being post-apocalyptic. It's a really exciting entry in the series, and I think will go down as just one of the all-time greats, if not the great. At number 8, we have a bit of a shocker entry, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Now, I know I've been down on the first two games, but I've always been adamant that Monolith Soft absolutely had something going for them, and that they could just get it together at some point. And to my very great surprise, that game was Xenoblade Chronicles 3. This game just feels like something out of the PS1 era, where it feels like it pulls you into its crazy, fantastical setting, meeting dozens of engaging, fresh, original characters that are all going through their crazy personal developments and fighting for a better future. This game thematically, I think, is what really sells it as one of the all-time greats. This is something that I think really needs to be celebrated as one of the absolute best JRPGs of the generation because of how much stuff there is to do, because of how much there is to see, the scope of the story and the characters. Spending 80 hours getting to know your 6 party members and the entire extended cast lead you to feeling incredibly attached to all of them. It is mind-blowing what Xenoblade Chronicles 3 manages to accomplish. It's really hard for me to admit this, but in a lot of ways, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is one of the best games ever made. There are certain aspects of this plot that get to me in a way that I've never really gotten to before. It's brutal in some respects. But that's what makes it like such a positive masterpiece. Something that really needs to be celebrated and enjoyed by Nintendo fans. Now, the big downside to Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and the only reason it's not higher on the list, is that unfortunately the MMO combat is still kind of limited and is not all that engaging. Even though the bosses you go up against are wild, creative, have a lot of personal motivation behind them, you really learn to hate them and everything they stand for, right? The combat itself is very simplistic and basic, but in a lot of ways, the gameplay is about more than just the combat. It's about exploration and discovering things and, finding what you need to proceed. And that's what Xenoblade's all about. And that's what the fact that they've perfected this formula so much is what makes the game so much fun to play, and something that I'm actually very interested in revisiting in the future. After this release, consider me a Xenoblade Chronicles fan, and I will be supporting Monolith Soft full throttle going forward. In my mind, Hollow Knight is by far the best indie release on Switch. I don't know necessarily how hot of a take that is, but I think considering this game's legacy and its rabid fan base, it's really safe to say that Hollow Knight is absolutely the single best indie game we've received in the past decade. And honestly, it's not even close. A lot of people would argue this is actually better than most Nintendo games. And although that's not really true, especially when it comes to other games in this genre, Hollow Knight does stand on its own for being this really cool mystical adventure in which you, a swordsman, get to explore the underground world and just uncover all of its secrets. Crazy monsters, amazing boss fights, deep dark lore. Like, Hollow Knight has it all. And It does have some things going for it. Like, it does feel a little bit too similar to Dark Souls in some respect, but it's honestly way better. The combat can feel kind of simplistic, especially when you start, like, unlocking more abilities and know how to exploit, like, all the enemy AI and just things of that nature. But, like, as a overall experience, something I've put, like, over 70 hours into, right? There really is nothing quite like it. Like, Team Cherry managed to make something like very special here, and it's definitely something that I hope more people discover and enjoy. At number 6, we have Dragon Quest XI. This is by far overall the best JRPG of the generation. By far, not even really close. The graphics are phenomenal. The gameplay is timeless. The story is just so charming. This is just a monumental example of what Square Enix used to accomplish back in the day when they were just actually putting out video games that people actually wanted to play. Right? This game feels like a relic of a bygone era. It feels like something that could have come out on the PS1. This feels like it hits all the same story beats. It's something that feels timeless and yet very, very modern at the same time. Something that developers intentionally tried to recreate. In the original release, these characters didn't even have voice acting. So when you play this game and experience it and just go through this monumental, amazing adventure, you really start to just love and appreciate the JRPG genre as a whole. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, in comparison to this, feels like it's a lot more experimental. It feels like it's trying to do things radically differently. It wants you to examine the characters and their worldview and really see how they progress and change throughout. Dragon Quest XI is more of a traditional hero's journey. And for a video game, that format is actually far superior, because Dragon Quest XI isn't just about watching a bunch of cutscenes play out. It's about being a good person and constantly becoming stronger and being invested in the world and the setting and the characters and just doing everything you can for the people around you, right? Dragon Quest XI, I think, does a far better job of that than Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Of course, they have a lot of similarities. There's a lot of overlap. Obviously, which one you prefer is mostly up to preference. They're both great, right? But as a whole, I think it's safe to say, if anyone wants to get into JRPGs this generation on Switch, you absolutely have to play Dragon Quest XI. This is an absolute masterpiece and should be acknowledged as just a standout title in the genre. At number 5, we have the game that filtered David Jaffe, Metroid Dread. And it really needs to be said that the game gets better and better on replay playthroughs. Every single time I play this, I'm really shocked by the fluidity of the movement, of the design, the world, the animations, the characters, right? Metroid Dread is honestly quite a lot better than a lot of people give it credit for, to the point where I'm honestly considering it to be superior than the iconic Super Metroid. The way this game was written off and ignored when it first came out was disgusting, but the fact that it's managed to retain its player base for so long, the fact that we're still talking about it, the fact that I still come back today and still play through this over and over and over. The fact that recently I did a hard mode playthrough and immediately booted up a Dread playthrough, right? The simple fact of the matter is Dread is an impeccably well-designed Metroid-like. Now, the reason I consider Dread to be better than Hollow Knight is because of the movement, the way Samus handles, the things that actually happen in the game. Because Hollow Knight has a lot of content, but a lot of it's really basic. A lot of it's really easy to get through when you know what you're doing, right? When you know how the map works in Hollow Knight, it becomes kind of trivial to to get to where you need to go and like find what you need and like beat the final boss, right? There's a lot of issues getting there. It takes a while on a first playthrough, but like Hollow Knight can be very simple if you know what you're doing. Dread, in comparison, as you get better at the game and you improve your skills, you'll find yourself like pushing Samus's abilities to the limit, right? The things she can do in this game are unbelievable. Even getting outside of like simple speedrunning tricks. The fact that like you have multi-directional aiming, the fact that like she's as fast as she is, the fact that she can slide, like all of it just leads into like this adventure that just feels so smooth and so much fun to actually play. Just compare this footage compared to what you saw in Hollow Knight. In Hollow Knight, you're just walking around like, some area, hitting some enemies that get in your way and like with some mild platforming elements. But in Dread, you're like navigating these labyrinths, you're avoiding, enemies that are in pursuit of you. You have to like figure out where to go sometimes, right? Like Dread takes so much more skill to actually play, and that's what makes it better. That's what makes it so much more fun to come back to and play over and over and over and over again. And I do feel as if more people who have taken the time to like sit and play through this game are beginning to realize that, like just how good it actually is. And now that this game is, on my list of the greatest of all time Switch games, I really, really hope more people pay attention to this game and give it the respect it deserves. Just as a disclaimer here, this is at number 4. If this wasn't the game of the year of last year, if this didn't just come out, I very well may have put this higher on the list. So a bit of a disclaimer here. There may be some flexibility in this list going forward. But, I was looking at my numbers. Number 4 is Mario and Luigi Brothership. And I wish it was higher. I wish I could give this game more praise. I wish more people would acknowledge this as the masterpiece it is. But right now, we're still in this weird phase where the gaming media and YouTubers are trying to call this game a disappointment or some letdown, when in reality, not only is it Game of the Year 2024, it's the best Mario RPG ever made, it's the best Mario and Luigi game ever made, and it is, by far, one of the best RPGs on Switch. Something with a really unique, innovative battle system that ties into the overarching world in a very unique way. The idea that you're on a ship and that you're sailing around, discovering new islands, it leads you into these situations where you're constantly discovering new things, you're going to new locations, fighting new types of enemies, getting into, meeting more and more kinds of people, and the game doesn't let up. Every single area is new, fresh, and exciting, and there's just all this stuff to find and explore. And the game remains fairly consistent throughout its 40-hour run. I remember playing Mario and Luigi Dream Team back when it first came out, and it was super long. But a lot of it felt padded, a lot of it felt bloated, a lot of it felt like it was going on too long, right? For all these reasons, right? Brothership is not like that. Brothership is impeccably well-paced. Everything that happens in this game matters. All of it builds up to a really amazing climactic finish that I think is going to go down as one of the all-time great Mario climaxes. It's just so well handled and so well executed and so good and so much fun to play. It's a travesty that so many people are so adamant that this game is disappointing or that it was underwhelming, when really it just comes off as if people just don't know how to have fun. But, in my opinion, this is absolutely one of the standout titles on Nintendo Switch. At number 3, we have one of my favorite Pokemon games ever, Pokemon Legends Arceus. An absolutely amazing breath of fresh air that really breathes new life into the Sinnoh region. Taking place in the distant past, your character goes on an adventure to learn about Pokemon and explore his environment. It is amazing seeing Game Freak evolve the Pokemon formula in this way. Coming up with all new crazy evolutions, fantastic boss fights, one of the best stories we've gotten in a long time. And what you have is an unforgettable Pokemon experience that just excels at everything it tries to do. And what's more, one of the very few Nintendo Switch games where we have confirmed to have gotten this year is actually a sequel to this. So we actually have more in the Legends pipeline coming to the console, but I don't think it's possible for a game to impress me as much as this one has. It was just so amazing. At number 2, we have Super Mario Bros. Wonder, the best 2D Mario game ever made, and an absolute gem of a game that reminds us all just how important the 2D platformer is in the video game space. And I do think this is the main reason why so many people adamantly refuse to consider Mario Wonder a great game, because it's just a 2D platformer. It's just another Mario game. It's not as good as Super Mario Bros. 3, man. Well, it is. Not only is it better than Mario 3, this game really demonstrates just how much creativity and charm can be in this kind of 2D platformer. The Wonder Seed mechanic allows Nintendo to create standard 2D Mario levels that anyone can get through, while still hiding in a crazy secret that really pushes the limits of even more experienced players. And you're never going to see the same effect twice. Every time you play this game and find a new stage and find a new Wonder Seed, you're going to see something wildly different and insane. Whether it's some limbo, giant stretchy thing, or some crazy music, or turning into an enemy and having to navigate some alternate path, right? The creativity in this game is off the charts and is a big reason as to why this game has been so popular with longtime fans. And yes, in spite of what a lot of people have been trying to tell you, this game is popular. It is talked about. And I think we are going to see this go on to be one of the most fondly remembered games on Nintendo Switch. But for now, this game is still in that early delusional coping and seething phase. People simply cannot accept that Super Mario Bros. 3 has been outdone not only a long time ago, but over and over and over again at this point. It happened with Mario World, it happened with Mario 64, it happened with Mario Galaxy, it happened with Mario Odyssey, and now it's happening with Mario Wonder. It's time to grow up and move on. Although The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is a phenomenal masterpiece of a game in its own right, it's actually a port of a Wii U game. The Wii U game was developed first. It is the original version. Breath of the Wild is essentially a Wii U game. One of the best games on Wii U, to be sure, but a Wii U game nonetheless. So that means, by default, that The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is the best game on Switch. Even though it's very still debatable as to which one of the two is better, I do believe Tears of the Kingdom is better. Tears of the Kingdom is number one, the best game on Switch by default, because Breath of the Wild was released on another Nintendo console. So, with that being said, what makes Tears of the Kingdom so great? What makes it so much better than games like Starfield, Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate 3, right? What makes Tears of the Kingdom better than all of that combined? What makes Tears of the Kingdom so much better than the rest of the gaming industry? Well, just look at it. Just look at like all the things you can do, the places you can see, the things you can interact with, the things you can discover, the places you can go, the variety in locations, in monster design, in AI, when it comes to the boss fights, when it comes to the incredible mechanics, right? In a lot of ways, Tears of the Kingdom is completely unmatched when it comes to its engine and the things that you can do in this game. One of the big copes that we saw when this game first came out in regards to like the things you can build and interact with, like, why would you want to do that? Because it's fun. Like, there's your answer, genius. The simple fact that the game rewards such creative thinking, the fact that you can think so far outside the box, is testament to just how impeccably well made this game actually is. Just how much better it is than its direct competitors. Like, this is a game that is so far ahead of the rest of the industry that Breath of the Wild came out in 2017, right? To this day, in 2025, not a single game has been able to top that. And here we are with Tears of the Kingdom, the direct sequel to Breath of the Wild, that really adds a whole new design to the game, all this crazy new content, another 150-hour-long adventure, something you'll be playing for years, finding new things near constantly, getting into all these memorable situations, finding all these unique, incredible things, right? Zelda is by far the greatest video game franchise in the world for a reason. And this is one really good example why. Tears of the Kingdom is just so good. And I'm proud to admit that it is, according to my Nintendo Switch, the most played game on my console.